Hello, today is Monday, August 26th, 2019. My name is Matt Fury, and this is The Rough Cut. All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to The Rough Cut. Got another good one for you. You may have heard me in recent weeks promoting the ACE EditFest event that just took place in LA on August 24th. Maybe, perhaps you were even there. If you were, you got to hear a really cool panel that I was lucky enough to host on demystifying the differences between reality TV and scripted TV. Although we didn't record that particular presentation, we did have the good sense to record a rehearsal we did a few weeks prior. It was a very honest and blunt discussion about working in unscripted TV, but personally I think it expanded to some other universal truths about editing that needed to be shared. Now maybe it was because we recorded it in the evening after all these folks had just finished a long day of editing, but they were in fine form and not about to censor their thoughts on what we were talking about. And I wouldn't dream of censoring them either, so you'll notice the language. It leans a little saltier on this one, which is all good with me. Hopefully it's good with you too. Now since we have 4 guests today, and by its nature a podcast is audio only, let me try and set you up in advance for who you'll be hearing from. The guests do a quick intro as well, but I'd like to give you even more context. So, the first voice you hear is editor Tom Costantino. Aside from cutting scripted shows like Seth MacFarlane's sci-fi favorite The Orville, as well as Fox's 911, Tom has also done other shows like American Ninja Warrior, Intervention, and 48 Hours. The next voice is that of Jamie Nelsen, whose credits include such shows as Blackish and Grownish, but also Top Chef, Project Runway, and the aforementioned Intervention. Next up is Maura Corey. Maura has not only edited shows like Good Girls and Teachers, but also America's Got Talent, Extreme Makeover Weight Loss Edition, and Beyond Scared Straight. Last, but certainly not least, is editor Molly Schock. And if there's an unscripted show she hasn't cut, they just haven't invented it yet. Together, these ACE editors have a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom, and certainly their fair share of wit, and it's all here on display on this edition of The Rough Cut. So, there's a lot to talk about. Before we really start talking about it, we need to know who's talking. Seated from left to right across your internet dial, why don't you kick us off, Mr. Costantino?
I got my first job, a scripted job, was on CSI Miami, and I got it from working on 48 Hours. My boss, who was taking a set visit at CSI Miami, met my soon-to-be future new boss and said, hey, we need someone who could work with the script, more like work with the script, and I met her in a coffee bean, and the rest was history.
I'm Jamie Nelsen. I'm an editor. And I started in reality television, and then I transitioned into editing scripted, and now I'm editing scripted and also producing unscripted.
My name is Maura. I'm also an editor, oddly enough.
Welcome, Maura.
Oh, thanks. I started in award shows, reality, ended up getting my first scripted job because it was an improv hybrid job. It was basically like Curb. It wasn't Curb, but it was basically... the entire show was improvised. It had an outline, and then that was it. The actors just talk. And so they wanted somebody who could deal with volumes of footage, like someone who could do documentary editing. And it was a sitcom, and that was my first scripted, and then I slowly just moved into doing reality and scripted, and then now.
So another gig where they were looking for an unscripted editor.
Mm-hmm. I'm Molly Schock. I'm an editor. I primarily work in unscripted. I do a lot of competition reality shows. I've done RuPaul's Drag Race, All Stars. Currently I'm on MasterChef. I've done, if you've seen it on TV, I've probably done it. I did, Survivor, Project Runway, Top Chef. What did I do?
Naked and Afraid.
Naked and Afraid, yes. Maura and I worked on a fantastic show, critically acclaimed, called Beyond Scared Straight. And I got my start cutting promos for Baywatch. And from there, I moved into cutting a lot of documentaries. And it was the documentary style of editing that when reality unscripted kind of came around, I thought, oh, I'm just going to cut this like I cut my documentaries. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I felt like I cracked the code. I've cut elements of scripted in the kind of work I've done. I've not done like a full-on scripted production. I've done films for festivals and things like that. But I think we've all found throughout our career that there's this misconception of oh, well, you cut unscripted. Well, this is a scripted project. You wouldn't be interested. Or I've got my scripted project. What do I want with those reality editors? They don't understand my art. It's obviously a very...
Well, it's pervasive it's not just at the top. It's pervasive all the way down to the PAs. So
yeah.
So it's just we want to one of the reasons we wanted to do this topic is to really show that it is what the end product is. We're all storytellers, and we use the same tricks and skills in what's the most effective way to tell this story, or like, oh crap, they didn't cover this shot, or the camera didn't get that angle. But I got to illustrate this somehow. How do I tell the story that needs to be told? And we pull from the same bag of tricks.
What are the perceptions out there, the negative perceptions out there that you want to break through here?
I think with Unscripted, for me anyway, I've been very fortunate, especially like the past 5 or 6 years. I've worked on some really fantastic quality products, but I know that a lot of people may say, oh gosh, reality TV, that's the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. Like, it's the worst thing that happened.
Ew,
but there's so much wonderful character development or humor or just
craftsmanship
that can be seen in unscripted shows. I mean, again, we're whether it's a package for American Idol and you learn about this kid from the middle of nowhere and you've got these hopes and dreams and you're really rooting for him. There's a lot of merit in unscripted programming. And so that's one of it's getting better because there's this stigma of like, oh, it's all, I don't want to disparage any shows, but I'll say, the more exploitive, like the Housewives or the Honey Boo Boos of the world, the Kardashian shows, because there's a negative stigma to some of those shows, that stigma is kind of drifted onto, oh, you work on that kind of show?
It's all about, like, they think that anytime you get unscripted footage, people look at it as just like somebody running with a camera, and it's not. They are running with a camera, but when you get the footage in, you have to craft a story, just like in scripted. You have to craft a story. So you look at all the footage and everything that comes with that to rearrange the footage, even if it's scripted or unscripted, in a way that makes a viewer feel empathy, sympathy, comedy, drama, and craftsmanship, versus thinking that just because it's not real, it's not actors.
Or that somebody didn't didn't pre-plan it and say these words and this will tell my story.
Right.
It's just like saying like nonfiction literature isn't legit. Like these are real stories about real people. Like the truth is always more interesting than fiction, and even the best fiction is derived from true stories. So what is the guy, Walter Murch wrote the book, and he said, what's the number one reason to make an edit? For emotion.
Yeah.
I love The Housewives. I do scripted. I love The Housewives. Why? Because I feel something and I have more investment because it's real. And it's harder to tell that story. And, with people who aren't actors, they don't have lines, and create that drama and like steer your narrative and like retrofit storyline. Like it's in reverse engineering thing. And like, it's a huge undertaking to make a compelling, interesting reality show. No wonder they're the most highest rated on television. Look at the top tier of shows. It's reality shows, it's competition where you're actually invested, and it takes a tremendous skill to make those. So the fact that it would be poo-pooed in any way, to me, is just crazy. And if there was a merit for that, it was back when reality shows were being made that should not have been made.
Yeah.
And not today. That those days are over.
Yeah, like Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire and the really exploitive.
Oh yeah, I did.
Well, but in fairness, I think we're selling our past brethren short. Those
fair enough. Yeah.
Episodes were very complicated.
What brethren?
No, I'm saying by throwing the swan. Not that I'm saying the swan is the high art.
No. But I didn't mean to do that by saying that. I'm just saying that there is a perception of those kind of shows
that trickles down.
That trickles down.
Right. But
I get that.
It's a bigger issue. It comes down to the core of this is not understanding the craft. Yeah. People don't understand the craft of editing or what it really is, how it can influence something, and then to certain people, reality is one more layer removed from that, so it's even more of a mystical, I don't understand, I don't know what you do. And usually, I hate to say it, comes out in an interview. And I'm not throwing anybody in a bus who's ever interviewed me, but there's been some interviews where they're asking questions of these obtuse ways to describe how you edit. And I'm like, I don't know how I articulate how I storytell. I don't say. It's like it then turns to a pretentious thing. So I think it's not understanding the general craft of storytelling that also adds to the mystification of this whole thing.
Well, I think more to the point, working without a script, you're developing these storytelling muscles that you otherwise wouldn't have to if you were given so much more direction on what to do in the edit. And it feels like you're a stronger editor by having to find these moments, having to craft this emotion that may not have been there.
That's the beauty of it, is that script editors also have that muscle, because effectively, now not if it's a show necessarily where they don't seem to work the story in the edit room, they might have a little less of that, but if it's a show where they're, I know. Well, I mean, there have been in the past, but I'm saying if it's a show where they're really working the narrative and twisting the narrative and changing it and layering it in the edit room, which happens an F ton in scripted, then basically you are doing a reality show with less footage.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the people really say the same thing 15 times, so you're really looking for that one take where they change that one word. Or they to give that one look because they went to go reach their Diet Coke, and suddenly that's going to be a whole thing you base an entire thing on. Reality.
I just did a scene, and this not the show, but the last show I was on. This guy, I don't know what the hell is going on, but I used pre-roll, post-roll, like everything I could find to make this shootout work, just because they didn't cover it at all. And it was outside, run and gun, and there were points where I'm like, well, I had to cheat every shot.
So Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
The footage is just a suggestion.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
just a starting point. We blow it up, we split screen it, we reverse it, we speed it up, we cut and do a fluid morph, we add a breath, we ADR, like it's all
I've grafted walls onto things
Yeah.
so that people don't see a character in a scene, but it's
Yeah.
the same thing.
You've made fire in a cave.
I've made fire in a cave. That's a whole
made
other
fire
thing.
in
But
a
it's the same thing you would do in a scripted show as an unscripted show. The only difference is that in
Problem
the case of a
solving.
scripted show, if you're lucky enough, you have a really good VFX team behind you, so you have a little more muscle, so you can get a little more outside the box. But basically, in unscripted, you kind of got to do some of those visual effects yourself. So that better be a pretty good tracking thing you're doing.
I mean, the show I'm on right now, I'm on MasterChef, and for a typical show, there's 9 cameras. So that's a luxury. I'm editing the finale right now, and there's 18 cameras, so it's a lot. But I did Naked and Afraid last year, and a lot of times there's 1 camera for 21 days. They'll have 2 cameras for the track in or track out, and then they'll give the survivalists handheld camera so they can kind of like do diary cams or if something interesting is happening. But people always talk about, like on Survivor, oh, you don't see it all, it's 3 days crammed into 40 minutes. Naked and Afraid is 21 days in 40 minutes. And you still have to tell a story that doesn't feel rushed and make sense and know these big chunks to drop out.
Some directors in scripted television are amazing, but some don't think like really good reality directors, and they won't shoot tops and bottoms of scenes, or they won't shoot extras, or they won't shoot B-roll. I mean, you don't call it B-roll in scripted, but they don't shoot the elements in which to create a narrative weaving story, so you are forced to figure out how to get from this scene that just cut off to a completely different scene, either because you pulled out the scene in the middle or because you need to create some sort of emotional connection between scene A and scene B.
We don't have scripts in unscripted, but we do have string outs and storyboards. So because we'll have a story producer who will watch the footage beforehand and kind of figure out what the highs and lows are, and like these are the beats we want to make sure we tell. And I call myself kind of like a mathematical editor. I'll walk in, I'll see like a bulletin board, and they'll have 5 acts and 30 cards saying these are the scenes, just scene cards. And I can walk in and look and go, too many cards. We got to lose at least a third of these. And like, oh, well, just cut it. I want to see it. And while I appreciate the luxury of wanting to try things, I've got 4 weeks to get a rough cut done of a 42-minute show. I do not have time to indulge wandering around to find water. No, they find water. It's, so it's
The same in scripted. I just did. Is it okay to say?
Please.
I swear to God, I just did this show, and the director. Oh shoot! I got to be really careful about how I do this. The director came back and wanted to make a drama, so everything was a meal. We made a meal out of everything, and there was this perception that if you make it longer, it's funnier. I don't know where that came from. And then that person went away, and the EPs came back and said, "Can you please turn this into a comedy?" And I said, "Sure. Give me a day." So it's like it's not like scripted is this I think there's a perception about scripted editing that it's like set in stone and you just plug in the numbers. You can get footage back and just like a reality show, do it 100 different ways with completely different tone because of the editing process. Do you want a drama? It's a bad drama. Or do you want this, like, because it's meant to be
We can make it a drama.
It's meant to be a comedy, but you're turning it into like a shitty drama. And that's the same in reality. Like, you can stretch it and bend it and shrink it.
Oh, it's fabulous.
However you need to in order to make a compelling story. And there is a way to ruin it. Like in scripted. It's not like, that was the thing for me. Like, I definitely think it's easier.
Oh, there's a great way to ruin it in scripted. I think it's actually easier to ruin it in scripted.
Yeah.
Because
But people don't think so.
No, but
People
that's
are
what
like,
I'm
you're in
saying
scripted, it must be so easy.
No,
Well, first of all, it is
no.
easy compared to reality. I will say that. I will always argue till the day I die that scripted is easier than reality. It is. I'm sorry. It is. Sorry. When I was working in reality, one of the notes that we got, that actually, this wasn't me, this is another editor. This team gets dropped off in a van. We would like them to be dropped off in a helicopter. I don't get that note in a scripted show.
No, that is true.
Okay?
You
don't get that in a scripted show. And you have to do it, or else you're not good at your job.
One of the quality, the quality of notes.
Crazy.
I'll actually say, I will actually say, I did a job for, a social media platform. Their notes were not intellectually based. They were not story based. They were not character based. That's a Wednesday. No, but it was like, and I'm making a joke. It was like those good old like low grade reality show notes that I haven't gotten hit with in a while.
You know what would be great?
They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, it'd be great. It was like, weren't you there on set? Like,
Great.
I would
love that too.
Did you shoot
I've always
that?
wanted to do
No, I don't have it. You
I
didn't
want to do
shoot
a
it.
cross-stitch sampler in my edit bay that says adjectives are not notes. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
it's like just zhuzh it up or make it
sing.
Make it sing. I'm like,
Make it sing.
It's like I can pace it up. I can make it faster. I can make it darker. I can
People don't know. They don't know.
So here's another perception, and I'm gonna be ready to duck. Unscripted is a stepping stone to scripted. You graduate to scripted.
Depends on who you ask.
Maybe that's how someone gets into the business, and they wanted to do scripted, but reality was their way to get into the business. I respect that.
There's scripted editors that want to get into unscripted because there's a lot more unscripted work. And some people just like to work.
And you make more.
And you have more
money.
I personally think you have more creative freedom. And so that's one of the reasons I've primarily stayed in unscripted is because I really enjoy my job, but I also know that I don't want to get to the end of my career and not have played in all the paint boxes. And I want to know that I'm doing what I'm doing because I love it, not just because I had to. So I love what I do.
That's an interesting way to say, like, why are we in it, or why did we move on to scripted or stay in unscripted? Like,
Why did you?
Well, I did it for it's such a personal thing. I moved into it because I was getting to the end of intervention and I had been there for a while, right? And it was kind of coming to a close. You took over for me.
Yes.
But I did it because it was too depressing. I was too depressed to do that show. I needed to laugh.
Yeah.
And I was worried about the longevity of my career in reality. And to your point, if I'd be able to find projects that I loved. And I knew in scripted I'd have a bigger chance of that because in reality, there weren't a lot of reality shows that I really loved and I really watched, because I watch a lot of reality. I love reality TV. And as an editor, I was like, well, what do I do next? And I wanted to, like, to your point, broaden my horizons and be able to do a lot more and have like way more options, because ultimately we want to be editing until we retire, right? I mean, what is that? Depending on how much you've saved. For me, I probably have to keep working until I'm like 65. I hope I don't, but am I going to be marketable on a Bravo show when I'm 62? Well, probably not, but I might be able to do this CSI, Boca or whatever the hell is, or whatever. Like you open yourself up, or maybe I could do documentary. I don't really know, but I felt like there was a lot of pressure to make these like really fast-paced,
Yeah.
hot, sexy things out of just nothing.
I felt that.
all
I
the
felt that
time,
way
and
at
it
the
was
same.
so tiring.
And
I felt that way at the same time
Really
too.
exhausting. And nobody understands what you do. They just want it done.
Yeah, there's
It's
I mean, and there's
very
a skill, and
frustrating.
some people have. I mean, we have on MasterChef, we have 2 editors specifically to do the openings. Tonight's on and coming up,
Yeah.
and they are like 2 of the top editors in the business at doing this. Like they're always on Idol and The Voice and all these things. I can't do what they do.
Yeah.
They love what they do.
It's so specific.
It's so specific.
I think
But
there's
they
different
say,
types of editors, though.
yeah, but
There's like flash and bang, and there's
Yes.
story, and there's people who do like, I mean, I know you're great at competition reality stuff. I mean, you do competition amazing. Like, I do more docu-follow stuff. That's more my style when I'm doing like documentary style or docu-follow or docudrama or, you know, I've done Housewives. Loved it. It's fun as shit.
Maura and I did a fantastic docu-follow show called Beyond Scared Straight, and it was some of the most pure editing I ever did because I loved my interview. They're like, okay, we'll have like a little bit of a drone coming in and a little bit of drone coming out and no music for the rest of the show. I'm like, you mean I get to cut a show and it has to hold up the content? Not
Season 1,
not
we
being-
had no music.
Not being, charted up with, how to make the audience feel because of music, but like we're really gonna
Create an internal rhythm.
yeah, and it was fantastic.
You've organically already started to bring up different types of reality programming. So what are all the different types of reality shows you could do? You said docu-follow?
Docu-follow is where you're kind of finding the show
Documentary.
in the field. It's shows like Swamp People or Deadliest Catch, where they'll film for the hunting season and then go, okay, we can make a show out of this and out of this and out of this, and so that's docu-follow. Docu-soap is like your Housewives, your Kardashians. Field competition would be like Survivor, Amazing Race. Stage shiny floor competition shows are like The Voice, American Idol. Then there's documentary bio shows like Biography or American Masters.
Cooking shows.
Yeah, cooking shows. Those are more. Yeah, those are kind of a cross between field and shiny floor.
Then there's, like,
Top Chef and
Rolling packages for every award show.
exactly. There's news programs like Deadline or Dateline, excuse me, 60 Minutes. So I would say all those fall under reality.
Okay, so now that you've broken all those out, it feels like just in general, this business lends itself to a caste system, that putting people in boxes, like you do this and you do this and you do this.
I mean, I appreciate that we're all reality, but like part of the reason I got
absolutely.
into scripted is because I wanted to break the bounds of being not just one thing. I've had a lot of issues, but I get bored. I like to challenge myself. So I have what some people have said, oh my God, you have a smorgasbord of experience, to some people who have been like, oh, you have a smorgasbord of experience.
Yeah.
Now, I like to be with the people that are smart enough, those will know who that is out there in the world, to know that the smorgasbord of experiences means that I have an arsenal of stuff that I can take and use. Everything that I've learned has allowed me to get to where I am now, my mediocre career as it is. I've been able to take even the smallest thing, like doing moves in a picture at 48 hours. I don't know. I mean, an animatic years ago when I worked in advertising, how to layer. The machine is different, but the analogy and the math is the same when I'm trying to figure out how to cut a guy out of a scene. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of losing my point a little, but I think this idea that people try and box us both in scripted and unscripted, it's a thing you constantly fight against, but I think it's the thing that I am most proud of, that I have worked in all these genres.
I've actually, and I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but when you're sitting and you pull some magic out of your ass,
Yeah.
people go, what? How did you do that? And it's like, duh, kind of thing. And it is those skill sets, I think, that learning in a very,
Well, I'm kind
intervention.
of secretly proud, and I'm kind of secretly proud when they don't get that excited, because now it's almost like, oh, they're used to, they know that we can do this. We have these tricks in our book, so it's like it's become part of the thing. Like, especially if it's like an unscripted thing that I bring in here.
I love that you are proud of all this stuff, because that's, again, part of what I want this conversation to be about, is that we all have amazing skills and we should be proud of them, and people should be proud. I don't want them to downplay, oh, well, I did promo editing for a while, but I don't want to talk about that. You can tell a story in 30 seconds. That's a skill I can use.
Yeah.
There's no past job experience that you should not draw upon to further yourself forward.
Do you approach your scripted editing the same way you approach your not unscripted editing?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll lay down a piece of music and then I'll cut something to it, or if it's like a gun battle, or if it's sometimes I'll do a radio edit of a physical scene, and then I'll figure out how to get the cutaways in there and twist and turn. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I apply different things. Yeah.
So Tom, you made a point about wanting to have a smorgasbord of different experience. It's a very competitive business. There's an argument that can be made that if I can establish myself as a specialist at this one thing, if people are thinking like, oh, we're doing that, we got to call Molly. She's done that a ton. She's great at it. That's going to give you a leg up over the competition in increasingly competitive environment.
And that works for some shows, and that works for certain kinds of environments, especially cookie cutter stuff. But I also feel like what happens to that one time when you're doing something and it breaks, and now you don't have anybody, you don't have a fire person in house to.
What do you mean when you're doing something and it breaks?
Like, even in the best of shows, I mean, let's say Unscripted, it's like, okay, it's their art, they shoot these beautiful scenes, and they're not going to touch the script. And then there's that one day where they brought in a guest director and it tanked, and they rushed it and it didn't hit the page, and now there's someone in there who doesn't necessarily have that skill set, and everybody's drowning trying to get it fixed. So if you happen to have that skill set and you're in the chair, you can dig them out.
What you're speaking to, like a small facet of a larger thing, and that is your reputation. I mean, my reputation is not just I'm good at this kind of editing specifically, but I am a reliable worker. I think I'm a nice person. I think I am, good to my assistant editors. I think I'm a good team player. And, so these are all reasons why I get hired, because I think people like to work with me. And, that gets around as much as it's very, very rare that I'll be on a show where there's an editor that is a total asshole, but they have to keep him because he's just the best. And I'm like, it's not worth the grief, but you're the one writing the check, so okay. But that rarely happens. I find that the people that are both good at the job and good workers get the call.
I would say it's like a 2-tier thing. Can you do it? Yes. Can you get someone to hire you to do it? That's another story. We are all, it sounds like we're really on the same page about like what storytelling really is, how to use our skill set. Then there's this whole other thing of like, okay, how do I get a job?
Yeah.
Because when I was trying to get into scripted with a reality resume, it was very difficult, and you remember.
Oh, we have stories.
We were talking each other off the ledge on a daily basis.
I mean, literally sitting on ledges.
Yes.
They were small ledges.
I have an Emmy. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Why am I sitting outside here?
It was really hard.
I mean,
it was very difficult. It was very It was very hard when you're in the reality show game or whatever genre you're in, and you're at the top of your game, and then you want to go and switch over to something else, and how to get the jobs, how to get the interview. That's a whole other panel. I feel like we could get.
Yeah. And rejection is part of the whole thing.
God,
I mean, I have an amazing resume of shows that told me to fuck myself.
Seriously.
In the hardest way possible. And I'll name them. Ozark. I mean, I wanted to be on Ozark.
Married.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't cut
oh
Married.
My God.
Sorry.
It's different. Like I'm joking around, but some of those shows, like I got beat out by some scripted editors who are incredibly talented, and like I worked alongside them. They totally deserved their job.
Yeah.
In some cases, I got beaten out because my resume wasn't as long, and that hurt because I know that there is a stigma attached. Even though that we both have 20 years in the business, mine is like, well, this crap doesn't matter.
Yeah. So in terms of the people doing the hiring, are they looking at the length of the resume, the recognition of a show, or any accolades you received for that show?
All the above, depending on the person. I think there was one show where they didn't think I had to keep up to camera because they couldn't understand that I was actually still keeping up to camera. But intellectual mind, it was for the bad season of Community. where the questions that they asked were really philosophically weird. They didn't really understand.
Because they don't understand what we do. They shouldn't even be in charge of editing.
But it had nothing to do with editing. It was sort of like it was these weird sort of like mathematical things of like, yeah, I can edit fast. Don't worry. Is that what you were like? Is that what you were? And then I get nervous because I'm like, what do they think? They must think I suck, because I'm already like, it's already like my big chance to get into an interview, and then so I go into a spiral, and the next thing you know, the interview's over, and it's like it's over. But I find that in scripted, in the best situations, especially in scripted and in unscripted, but in scripted, they've made a decision that my unscripted is an asset, and I already have the job. It's my job to lose.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you come into one of these shows or a movie with the unscripted prejudice, the statistical odds of you getting out of that one alive are slim to none.
Yeah, my first couple jobs were definitely people who knew me and my resume being very thin on the scripted, but they're like, we just lost an editor. We know you're hungry. We know you probably want to do this. I'm like, yeah, get me in the door, and no questions asked, basically.
Yeah.
And, tried to kill it and walked out with like, hey, tell your friends. And so that's kind of how it worked out in a weird way. So.
Well, because what we're talking about is that editing is editing and storytelling is storytelling. It doesn't matter what kind of box they try and put you into. Why don't we just sort of do a little bit of a lightning round, and if it's possible, to think back to different unscripted shows that you've worked on, and were there any moments where you were at least conscious that, hey, I'm learning something here that's going to be really valuable for me, or there was an experience or a challenge that you just remember, like, this made me a better editor?
Intervention.
Intervention.
Why? What happened?
Okay, so we're talking about the different genres of reality shows. If you're cutting competition shows, there's something you're going for there, right? I wasn't cutting for psychology when I was cutting Top Chef. Mm-hmm. I wasn't cutting for psychology. I was cutting for the thrill of the stakes of the competition. The process, and these talented, amazing people competing and coming up with amazing creative design. Like, that was so cool. When I went to intervention, I had to create a psychological profile for multiple characters, and every single scene had to advance their motivation, and everything had to culminate in this intervention. So I had to reverse engineer, and we do that a lot in reality.
Yeah, reverse engineer the narrative.
Oh, yeah.
How it ends up, we have to reverse engineer the whole thing backwards. Mm-hmm. And for intervention, it was psychology. That show, Intervention, made me a better scripted editor than any scripted show.
I actually add to your point when you're done, because this is.
You took over for me on Intervention.
No. But go finish what you're saying, and then I can add to this.
I'm done. I would do that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
No. But I was going to say, because we both did Intervention, but also, this also happened because Intervention is a lot like True Life, where it has sort of the same thing, where you're not telling the exact truth. You're not telling the exact facts of the story, but you're kind of telling the emotional narrative truth. So maybe you're compressing time a little. Yeah. Maybe this one cutaway is from a different scene, but the basic story is true. Yeah. But the thing is that I trip up people, not Seth because he's the smartest man I know, but and other people in scripted where I'm reverse engineering. Like, I'm talking so fast out of my mouth because like I know where it's got to go, and in my brain, I'm mathematically like we're over here in Act 2, and I'm trying to like explain to them, well, we're going to do this and this and this, and they're like, and they look at you like, I don't understand. But it's all because of this, unscripted thing where I've had to reverse engineer it, and having that skill set, I don't get fired for not making sense to people, is the greatest thing I've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a specific example, but I know that's something I like to do because I'll have a story producer. They'll give me like the story points we have to hit, and then we'll kind of talk through them. Like, okay, well, if we get here, what's the motivation for this? So, they'll give me a string out, but then I'll always dig into the footage because that's my responsibility to like, because they don't necessarily see what I'm looking for. I'm like, oh, there's this great little aside here. That's going to set up so much better, this betrayal here or this downfall. And I love talking with my story producer and reverse engineering, because again, with like especially with competition shows, it's got to pay off. Like, it's a magic trick. You have to understand why the results happen. Like the clip that I will hopefully show at EditFest, when I watched the Raw for the challenge, this one particular drag queen, I'm thinking, oh my God, they were awful. Well, they obviously lost. And my producer said, no, they win. I'm like, oh, okay, well now I have to make that make sense. because I hate that. And as you know, a lot of these shows are subjective judged, and you can blame the judges, but I don't want the judges to look stupid or get, you know. So, yeah, that's a really, really fantastic way of phrasing it, reverse engineering.
I actually remember one specific scene that I cut, which was for Extreme Makeover Weight Loss Edition. And it's kind of the same thing you were talking about psychologically, creating this moment. It was a scene where this kid, no joke, had one arm and was going to have to learn how to ride a bike. That was like his challenge, because he was going to lose all this weight and he was going to ride a bike. And they were going to have him ride to like 100 miles, and he was freaking out. And they weren't even going to put it in the show. And I watched the scene, and the kid was all over the place, kind of just freaking out, trying to convince the trainer that he didn't want to do this. And they're like, well, we can't use this. I'm like, hold on. This is great. I have an idea. It's just whatever you do with every scene. You take the top, put it here, you take the end, you put it there, you start rearranging it, and I just slowly put together.
Yeah.
And I slowly built this conversation where it just felt like his panic just rose, even though that wasn't it at all.
Right.
Until the point where, and I was showing my EP, and he's like, in the middle, he's like, hold on. I'm just like, wait, because he's going to get drawn in. He's like, and he just kept watching it.
Oh, I love that.
To the point, and you just like, and the music just goes in, and I was like, at that point, I'm like, that's how fun it is to cut a scene, because you manipulate all the pieces to create this emotional truth for this guy.
Yeah. The thing I learned in Unscripted, because, and especially bringing it back to intervention and also True Life, or where you started doing like a docu-follow, I've had to build whole scenes out of 3 reactions and a couple of people walking outdoors. So what I used to do in the footage is like when I was like, oh my God, I got to build a narrative scene, I would literally like scrub hours of footage and look for like weird things, a reaction, a word, a sentence,
anything.
And you build like a little bin of like weirdness.
Moments.
I now do that in Scripted too, if I have the time, where it's like, even though they're saying the same stuff all the time, there's little bits in those, like a look,
An
eyebrow,
eyebrow.
eyebrow raise, or like the director comes in and stops something, and then like, the person's like going to take a drink or something, and I'll build the same thing. And now I have this little toolbox of weirdness that, now granted in scripting, maybe you don't have to build an entire scene, but I got to build a third of a scene, or I got to build an out.
There's got to be that connective.
There's got to be that connective tissue. So it's the literal same process of the bag of tricks.
Drag Race is so much fun to work on, because drag queens give the best sound bites. They're these over the top emotional people that give face and whatever. And so you just watch
like
the
a face
interviews.
spin.
Literally, like, an eyebrow raise or an eye roll or like a girl or a fan, whatever. Like, I literally had punctuators, which is great because I'm writing the jokes. Drag Race is so much fun because you cannot put too many jokes or sound effects in there. So sometimes you got to,
texture.
If you really want a joke to land, you can do it with a sound effect, with a look in scene, with a cut to a reaction shot of an interview. But you, as the editor, are writing that, because a lot of times story producers will give you the string out. And again, it's just the very pedestrian. Today we're going to be doing this. I sure hope the judges like this. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I hate those very predictable, I'm not here to make friends kind of bite. So, okay, I'll build the structure of the scene, then I'll go back and read all the transcripts. I'm like, well, this is a much more interesting thing that's being said for subtext. And so you create a much richer scene, because the obvious stuff is obvious. So
because the viewer has no idea what it was that you were working with, I wonder if it's the most validating and frustrating. You're given A material to work with, and you turn it in an A, and the viewer sees an A. You're given crap to work with, and you turn it in a B. You save it and make something passable. That's going to feel like, what you just said, Brian.
I think there should be, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think there should be an Emmy.
Me too.
I think there should be I'm not joking.
I totally agree.
Every actor an Emmy.
Yes, it's every actor, but every actor.
Wins the Oscar.
But I do think that there should be a category. It's I don't know.
Shittiest material for the best edit.
Getting it up to speed, because I don't know how you would judge it. Like, I think it would have to be like an extended judging, where it'd
almost be like
you took the broken episode.
It would almost be like you'd have to enter it on your own. Like they would create a bit of footage and say, okay, create a 3-minute scene from this. And
but it's like I root for that, because it'll never happen. I know I'm ragging on Ozark again, but it's like or like another or Handmaid's Tale, where I just saw an episode where every other shot was eyes. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Great, nice. I'm rooting for that guy who's on, CSI, or whatever, NCIS LA, who only had 8 days to shoot a 10-day script.
Yeah.
And somehow managed to get these freaking actors who were on season 13
to still look
have some
interesting.
life.
still look interesting and do all these visual effects and have like 1.5 day editor's cuts. That motherfucker should get a fucking trophy.
Yeah.
Whoever that is.
For doing an amazing
job that more people will actually see, but just aren't in the zeitgeist of the variety reviews. But I digress.
Speaking of variety reviews, I just read a review where they were praising an actor of an episode of television that I edited.
Oh my God, really?
When's the episode?
Oh my God! No.
Oh, good.
I would never say who it is.
I know.
And all the reviews are like, well, this is not a very good episode of television, but this guy is really good.
Oh my
and I was
God.
like, okay, well, you're welcome. Because
Yeah.
this person can barely get a sentence out of their mouth. And it was like, and I remember hearing that from at Alan Heim, I think I went, and he was talking about like every award that this actress has ever won is mine.
Yeah.
And
heard those stories.
there's in reality too, like a reality or scripted, like it's the same thing. Like, oh, this is such an interesting show. Really? Well, they shot it in 5 seconds, and they were shooting a paper bag the whole time. But you're welcome. I made a hit show out of this thing.
A lot of the editors I'm working with right now did The Masked Singer, and they were all really kind of hoping that was going to get some Emmy love, because when
They did an amazing job.
they shot it over 6 days, didn't know what they were doing, and then the editors like really just and the producers got in there and
you can
really,
tell.
I mean, they
crazy good.
crafted it, and it
Editing
became this ginormous hit, and the editors really
Sometimes it happens.
You know, it's funny. It's funny you say that about the actors. I was on Good Girls. We did the scene. It was a day player. The guy was terrible. You know, it's a day player. What are you going to do? So we walk in. I show the scene. My producer goes, "Oh wow, he's really good." And I go, "No, he's not.
No, I'm
He's
very
terrible."
good.
She goes, "Well, let's look through the dailies." I go, "Okay."
Don't
Your
bring
funeral.
him back. Yeah,
And she did. She's like, "Holy shit!" I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
Well, I think if our goal going into this was to demystify
actors.
to shit on actors, to crap on the day players, mission accomplished. No,
Give us a microphone.
there's that old expression, story first, and I think that really comes through in what all of you said about the work that you have done, the work that you're doing now, and the skills that you apply to both unscripted and scripted, and I think it was really interesting. Well, I guess I got to have the final word on that one. You just heard from 4 very passionate and talented people that have logged many hours crafting many different kinds of stories, and I hope you were able to take a lot away from what they had to say. I know that I did. And you don't have to go back into our archives more than a week to prove what they were talking about. On our last Rough Cut podcast with Dean Zimmerman, he was talking about editing Stranger Things as well as the new Disney film Free Guy, and during that talk he mentioned looking through every single frame of footage he gets, as well as using speed changes and fluid morphs and reverse shots and all that stuff, all to tell the best story he can. And on today's podcast, you heard our guest say the exact same thing. So it doesn't matter what kind of show or movie it is, great editors tell great stories. And that's exactly who Molly, Maura, Jamie, and Tom, and Dean are. They're great editors. And that's not the only thing they all have in common. They all use Avid Media Composer to tell those stories. Come on, you knew I was going to say that. And you can too, if you don't already. So try or subscribe to the new Media Composer today. Hit that webpage, my.avid.com, and get started on your next story. My next story will be next week, as always, another podcast. Who will it be? Not sure yet, but you can have a say in all this. Let me know who you'd like to hear from. Just go to the contact page at theroughcutpod.com and let me know. This is Matt Fury, hoping you have a great week ahead, and one way or the other, I will see you back here next time on The Rough Cut.